You've got to be simple about these things. I know this, you can be subtle, but the message is lost. Everyone's trying to be subtle, everyone's trying to cover their own backside, and everyone's trying to be friends with everyone else, but the time has come for a complete honesty. And especially with the young people, they are so cynical of the debt that they're being set up with and the debts being left to them. They are really so cynical of our generation. I think we've let them down badly, and they know it. Since I got involved with Frederick Hayek, who was probably my favourite economist, at one stage I apologised. I said, I'm not really a qualified economist. And he said, oh, that's good, that is very good. He said, we economists, we dream our dreams and we dream our schemes, but he said, but we don't do anything. We need you to fire the bullets for us. Kalgoorlie was a great place to grow up. We made our own fun, and I grew up in an era where there was no TV or no sort of set entertainment that the kids have got in front of them today. You just had to make your own fun. You went camping, shooting, hunting, shot your own food and ate it in the bush when you were kids, and sold newspapers and had a newspaper around, made a bit of money, ended up buying a jukebox, being the first jukebox in Kalgoorlie, which was a big deal at that time. Well, how I got into the mining was really, I had very little choice. It was just, I was in it, I was born in it. My great-grandfather was one of the original prospectors in the Ballarat Eureka Stockade back in 1854. And then his son was one of the first graduates of the Ballarat School of Mines. That's my grandfather, and then he came to Western Australia and started a mining consulting business, which I'm still running. It's now been going for 114 years, and it's a great industry to be in. Led me to go to the Kalgoorlie School of Mines, and at that time, in the 1950s, I wanted to do geology, but the director of the School of Mines said, no, don't do geology, mining's finished. Do engineering. So I did electrical engineering, so I became an electrical engineer. It wasn't until I was about 50 years of age that I went back to the School of Mines and then did geology and floated a public company. Mining was in desperation. There was really nothing much happening in Western Australia in the 1950s. Really, we don't realise how desperate it was till we look back on it. It was like we were living in a vacuum. They were closing mines down at the rate of 1 a month. Gold has had a rocky road in Western Australia. That was the demise of the gold mining industry was in the 1950s. The gold price had been set by the government at just about $30, $38, and it was locked in at that price. And all the costs were escalating, but the gold was fixed by the government, so the mines were just simply going out of business. Then the gold was freed up in about 1971, and then everyone started taking an interest in gold. We started to realise that paper currency was very flimsy. Paper currency was based on nothing. So since then there's been a trend for people always to have some of their investments in gold. Gold's had a pretty good performance rate since the 50s, and that's why it's taking a major part in the world's currencies and more interest. As long as gold is scarce, the price will always remain up, and I think it'll always remain up as long as we have terrific confidence in government's ability to defraud the public by printing money the way they do. They print it like confetti, and that guarantees guarantees the price of paper money will continue to decrease, which means the gold will relatively be high in future. I see nothing wrong in saying things that have to be said. I think more and more we are becoming conscious that government is something of a fraud. The fact that they are spending money on buying votes but sending the bill to future generations is quite immoral. And if you and I were doing that, people would say, hey, this is not the fair thing to do. What they're doing is buying votes from the brain dead, if I can say that, but sending the bill to the yet unborn. And as that becomes obvious, I think more and more people will speak up against government. Government is not our champion. Government doesn't represent us. Government represents them. They must steal money from the public for their purposes. They have a pretense of doing it for the people, but the people are much better at doing it for themselves. I think young people today, and we deal with a lot of young people. We set up about 14 years ago, we set up this Mannkal Economic Education Foundation. We just call it Mannkal Foundation, and we've sent 400 young people so far to different internships, study courses and conferences around Australia and internationally, and we're still in touch with most of those. I've got about up to 10 of them working for me part-time, sometimes at a distance, but they also contribute to great input stuff. Talking to them is really a revelation because they see it so clearly. The questions they asked was, like, hasn't America learned anything from the global financial crisis? It's a good question, isn't it? Because you look today and you would say, well, America seems to have forgotten the global financial crisis. They successfully exported it to Europe, and then they're almost happy to see Europe come unstuck. They're almost happy to see the euro disappearing as a competing reserve currency, because that will enable the US government to keep printing their dollars, and they can only get away with that as long as it's the sole reserve currency of the world. The young people know this. The older people, the people that write a lot of the financial papers, it's never occurred to them that it's that simple. It's doubtful whether in the longer term the US can retain its US dollar as a reserve currency, because it's, again, there are so many people desperately seeking other currencies. They look around the world, they are looking at, they're holding commodities now instead of currencies, because they have really little faith in the US dollar maintaining its role. It's not clear what will emerge as a store of value, but I really can't imagine how they can just keep printing those dollars, US dollars, like confetti, and retain any value. I'm told that the value of the US dollar has dropped by 95% since 1914. And I mean, that's a terrible plunge. And where does it go from there? Really, when you look at the charts, it's not good. When I meet super successful people, I always ask the question, to what do they attribute their success? And not a single one has ever said to me that it's their education or which university they went to. It's always a surprising thing, an unexpected thing that happened in their life that made all the difference. 16, I was working in my father's engineering business after school, unpacking big timber crates that were imported machinery from America. In the crates, there was pre-bubble wrap, pre-polyurethane days. The packing material was crumpled up magazines. The crumpled up magazines were the Freeman magazines put out by the Foundation for Economic Education in the US. I got all this stuff, smoothed out the magazines and read them, loved the words, loved the story about the individual responsibility, and just said that 2 years later I got the job of being the editor for the School of Mines magazine. So I said, I'll use some of this stuff. So I pulled out these flattened out magazines and started using some of the material. Well, the sky could have fallen on me. It was a highly unionised town, and this stuff didn't go over very well. So I wrote to the president of the Foundation for Economic Education in New York, and I said, Mr. Reid, your ideas are not too good, they're getting me into trouble. Well, he had the patience and he had the foresight. He actually answered my letter, and he said, no, I think, Mr. Manners, I think our ideas are okay. It's just that if you adopt a position, you must put yourself in a position of understanding. You must have the ability to defend your views. And with that in mind, we've put you on our mailing list. And here's some books to start off with. And if you ever have any questions, please feel free to contact me. Well, we became great friends. He became my mentor from 16 years on right through till his death in 1983. He made a lot of difference to my life. But that was an accident. It was simply opening packing cases, and if that hadn't have happened, I probably wouldn't have got plugged into the wonderful world of free market ideas. And it's an adventure. The same Leonard Reid from the Foundation for Economic Education took a bit of an interest in me and kept sending me little letters and ideas, and gave me ideas of how to write letters to the editor and how to get them accepted and how to... He's full of little wisdom. He used to say, Ron, remember, you've only got a licence to change your life and not the lives of other people. It's interesting because he said this life is a learning process, not a teaching process. You've got to fully inform yourself to the point where people seek your advice. You can't go and push your ideas on people. And I've stopped being pushy. I'm easy now. But Leonard also said, if you can get an idea to the threshold of someone's consciousness and they accept it as their own, it's with them for life.